Subscribe now and press the bell icon. Never miss an update.
Hello. In this video, we shall discuss Epithalamion as a wedding song written by Edmund Spenser. First of all, let's have a brief introduction to the poem. Epithalamion celebrates Spenser's marriage in 1594 to Elizabeth Boyle. Epithalamion in Greek means at the bride's chamber. It is a song or a poem written in honor of a bride and a groom. The poem has 24 stanzas which represent hours of a day. Each stanza has either 18 lines or 90 lines except 15th and the last stanza which have 17 and 7 lines respectively. The poem has 433 lines, among which 365 are long lines that represent days of the year and 68 short lines. Spenser reflects on the private moments of the bride and the groom with a concluding prayer for the fruitfulness of the marriage. In the first stanza, Spenser calls upon the muse and urges them to inspire and help him to praise his beloved in the same way as Orpheus did for his own bride. In the second stanza, the poet requests the muse to proceed to his beloved's chamber and remember her that this is her wedding day. Hymen, the god of marriage, is already awake, and so should be the bride. This wedding will end her all pains and sorrows. In the third stanza, the poet directs the muse to bring all the nymphs so that they will accompany the marriage procession. On the way, they have to gather different fragrant flowers to decorate the path that leads to bridal chamber. At the door of the bride, their song will awake the bride. In the fourth stanza, the poet continues to guide the various nymphs. They are responsible to make the wedding day perfect. The nymphs who look after the ponds and lakes should make sure the water is clear and even untouched by lively fish. The nymphs of the mountains and woods should keep wolves away from the bride this wedding day. In the fifth stanza, the poet directly addresses to his bride to wake up as the sunrise is already gone. Birds are singing, making the wedding memorable and joyous. In the sixth stanza, the poet says that his beloved is now awake and her eyes, which were dimmed by darksome clouds, are now shining. They are brighter than Hesperus, the evening star. He requests the daughters of delight, the three attendants of Venus, to attend the bride. He also calls upon the hours of the day and night and the seasons to be present there. In the seventh stanza, the bride is ready and it is time for the groomsmen to prepare the groom. The groom requests the sun to shine brightly but not so hot lest it will burn the skin of his bride. He then prays to Phoebus, the sun god and the god of poetry, to give this one day of the year to him while keeping the rest for himself. The eighth stanza begins with minstrels who are playing music and are singing as well. Women are playing their timbrels and are dancing with enthusiasm. Boys who run down the street are crying the wedding song. Those who hear the cries applaud the boys and join the wedding song. In the ninth stanza, the poet looks at his bride who is approaching with a graceful pace. He compares her with Phoebe, the goddess of the moon, who appears from her east chamber. In her white dress, she seems to be a best virgin. The white dress so befits her that she looks like an angel. She avoids the gaze of her admirers, but blushes at the songs of praise. In the 10th stanza, the poet turns to the daughters of the merchants and asks them if they had ever seen such a fairy-like creature in their towns. A fairy who is sweet, lovely, and mild, adorned with graceful eyes and virtues. Her eyes are shining sapphires, and her forehead has the whiteness of ivory. Her cheeks are like red apples, and her lips are cherries that provoke men to bite. The virgins present there stand still in amaze and gaze her beauty. Her beauty caused the maidens to forget their song. In the 11th stanza, the poet praises her internal beauty, which he claims has seen better than anyone else. He talks about her lively spirit, which is adorned by heavenly gifts like sweet love, chastity, faith, honor, and modesty. In the 12th stanza, the poet directs that the doors of the temple should be kept wide open, since his beloved is going to enter the temple. The doors of the temple should be suitably adorned with posters. Then the poet advises the virgins that they should learn obedience while entering such holy places. In the 13th stanza, the bride stands before the altar. The priest blesses her while raising his two hands in prayer. Her cheeks blushes like two red roses, but her eyes are fastened on the ground with modesty. The 14th stanza shows the end of religious ceremony. The poet then asks the attendants to bring bride home. He calls his bride a victory over the circumstances and the glory of his achievement. The poet then directs to make feast for this holy day and turns our attention from the god of church to Bacchus, the god of wine. In the 15th stanza, the poet directs the young men of the town to celebrate this holy day by ringing bells. The poet feels overjoyed as the day is shining bright. Then the poet changes his tune to sadness as the wedding takes place on the summer solstice when the day is long and the nighttime marriage bliss will be delayed on account of it. In the 16th stanza, the poet seems to be tired and is complaining that the day is too long, but he then grows hopeful when the evening star appears from the east. He then addresses the evening star to come forward and pause the time quickly for the groom and the bride to consummate their marriage. In the 17th stanza, the poet requests the attendants, the singers and the dancers, to leave the wedding. He requests them to bring bride to her bed before leaving. The poet is eager to stay alone with his bride. He compares his beloved with Maya, with whom Zeus fathered Hermes. In the 18th stanza, the poet welcomes the night which comes after a long day. He asks the night to provide privacy and silence to the couple. He asks the night to spread its long wings over the couple so that none can see them. In the 19th stanza, the poet prays there should be no lament from either the bride inside or from the world outside. He prays to keep the demons and the evil spirits far from his bed. In the 20th stanza, the poet wishes the silence to prevail since it can protect the couple from evil. He also wishes the sleep should come when it's the proper time to sleep. He also provokes the love cupids to fly about the bed. In the 21st stanza, the poet notices the moon peeping through his window. He asks the moon to make her bride's womb fertile this very night. In the 22nd stanza, the poet asks gods and goddesses to bless the couple with happiness and make their marriage a strong and sacred bond. In the 23rd stanza, the poet again prays to all the gods to bless the marriage. He prays for large posterity. In the 24th stanza, the poet closes the poem by addressing it as a decoration and monument or memorial to his bride.